Well, welcome back, group, to For Fuck's Sake. I'm Dr. Cari, and today I am joined by Danielle Rees. Danielle and I go back a good decade. We have a good friend in common, and I first met Danielle because I bought skis from her, which is so crazy. So tell me about who you were before you became the perimenopause coach.
Yeah, so the ski company was actually my first business. So I became an entrepreneur about 10 years ago. Before that, I worked in women's health and wellness. I have a master's in public health, and I was in the nonprofit world for quite some time. So it's been kind of a transition from one thing to the next over the last couple decades.
I love that. And so is skiing still your passion or your preferred sport?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a mountain girl, 100%. We recently moved from the Lake Tahoe area to Colorado. And my number one stipulation from where we lived was to be closer to the ski resort than to town. And so we're, currently 20 minutes from local ski hill and 30 minutes down to town. So we're up in the mountains, and my husband and I ski every time that it's our day off. You know, we get at least 50 days in during the winter, and just did a big heli ski trip to Alaska this year for my best friend's 50th birthday, and it was amazing.
Oh my goodness. I have heard and seen nothing but amazing things about that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So have you always been a skier? Has it always been your sport of choice?
So my parents actually met skiing in Lake Tahoe. Well, to be clear, my mom picked my dad up in the bar after skiing.
Oh my God, kisses to your mom. Yes, please, Mom.
Yeah, at bar one, Squaw Valley, she was like sitting there, and as my dad described it, she like looked back into the sea of men, because you know how skiing is like a guy party for the most part, and she like pointed out to him and said, "You, what are you having?" And and brought him up, and apparently when they met to go skiing the next day, my mom took one look at his outdated equipment, because this was like in the 70s, and he had like the really old school kind of gear, and she said, "Why don't we go for a drink instead?" And they went to the Calneva.
Oh no. Because he was not prepared? Like he was not...
He had like such outdated cheap gear. She knew he wasn't a good skier, and I think that was going to take away the sex appeal for her. Anyone who's a true mountain person kind of knows that, like, if you are really, I don't know, really good at skiing, like, you know, it's not very sexy to see someone that, you know, is just learning. Like, it's just more of a turn on to be with someone who's also good at it. So skiing's in our blood. We started skiing when we were like 5. So.
Oh yeah, right on. I love that. And so how do you think that skiing and being an athlete like that set you up for professional success?
Yeah, so I was a varsity athlete. I actually played water polo at Stanford. The first year it was a varsity sport. And I was recruited to play water polo when I was a freshman in high school. I was not a swimmer, which is like a really important part. And I went to a private school in the Bay Area. And in California, swimming is like stupid competitive. Like,
yeah, it is
crazy competitive. There were some gals that recruited some of us from, as they called it, ball sports. So they recruited some of us from basketball and had us come in because obviously swimming is very much an individual sport, and you're kind of heads down, and they needed team players who understand, you know, like how to do moves and how to guard and pass the ball around and shoot and score and that kind of thing. So so I played water polo for all 4 years of high school and was recruited to play at Stanford. I did not get a scholarship. I had to try out to get on, and that was a pretty big deal because I was in the tryouts. It was like, I don't know, like 2 months, and we were swimming, and I was competing against all these gals who, like, you know, won CCS and all these championships and stuff in high school as, elite swimmers. And anyway, pretty big deal. So I would say what translates from being an athlete is to being an entrepreneur absolutely is grit.
Yeah, that's a great word. Grit. That's correct.
Yeah. Not giving up on yourself. Mindset is so important, right? I always seem to get the most improved player from the sports that I played. And I didn't have much talent, but I got most improved player trophies for almost every ball sport I played in high school. So
Yeah, it's the scrappiness. Like, if you've got tons of, blessed talent and all sorts of natural skills, if you're not coachable, you don't have stick-to-itiveness and perseverance, it doesn't matter what your body can do. Like, you got to have the brain power for that. That's so true. I love that. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I would definitely say, being a student athlete myself, like, I was not, on any team at Stanford, I'll tell you that. But I was the ball sports girl. And I actually did swim for, probably a total of 7 or 8 years growing up.
Okay.
And at one point, hilariously, I declared that I was sick of swimming, and I wasn't going to be on the team. But all my friends, of course, were on the team because I'd been on the team for years. Hello. And so I decided to be a diver.
Oh, wow.
I'm almost 6 feet tall, Danielle. Like, that was not the best move in the world to say I was going to be a diver. But I didn't have a whole lot of grit and stick-to-itiveness with that, to be honest with you. And so the first time that they're like, oh, we need somebody to swim, blah, 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 in the I was like, yep, that's going to be me. And so it was a slow transition into less and less diving and more time back swimming laps. And so,
what was your stroke in the IM?
I could kind of do them all, unless it was the 200 IM. I can't do fly for that long, but I can do 50 a fly. But usually I was backstroking or free, honestly. We had some really great breaststrokers on our team, and so they were sort of the hub of the IM medley. But my sport choices were definitely volleyball and basketball, which, with my height and my big paws, were definitely more lines of where I should have been than diving off a diving board and trying to make this many inches do anything like that. That was kind of silly, but I don't know. It was probably 13-year-old angst, and I'm going to take control over this and do something different that didn't actually make any sense at the time. But,
yeah, you got to try it. Got to figure it out.
I do think I would have loved water polo, though. I mean, that is such a badass sport, to be able to tread water for that long. Like, it's so much endurance and like fast twitch stuff too. You have to stay afloat when people are bringing you down and scratching you and, trying to drown you, essentially. And yet you've got to be super quick to catch and throw and be on defense. And I think I would have really liked that sport. So that's awesome. I did not know that about you. Yeah. Very rad. Love it.
Blast.
So did you graduate from Stanford then?
I did. Yeah. So I graduated in 99. I got my BA in psychology and human biology. So I've had a real passion for women's health, and I was really interested in like that physical health and mental health and how that works together, that like mind-body connection that's so common now. It was like something that people didn't even think about back then. They were like, what, huh? What are you talking about? What are you doing? And I kind of, just intuitively knew that they were linked together. And so that's why I got the second major.
Oh man, that's so true. Like, that is all of everything right now. Well, the research we're able to do, for sure. Like, how does your brain and guts and body all work together, your immune system, everything. And back then, like when I went through medical school, they were all very individual little boxes that hardly ever interacted. And now we know that's simply just not the correct path. So that's awesome. So speaking of that, how old were you when you started having problems with perimenopause?
Yeah, so I think when I turned 40 was when I started noticing fatigue. That was definitely my first symptom. But the second company I co-founded after the ski company was a sports bra company that specialized in developing high impact sports bras for women with larger breasts,
Yeah.
which I am not like a big breasted woman,
Nope.
but I did go from the C cup to a D cup when I turned 40, and my breasts were so painfully swollen and tender that I had to wear this high impact sports bra for doing yoga and Pilates. Like,
What?
I couldn't ski without a high impact bra because I was so tender and swollen. Yeah. It was kind of, yeah.
Yeah, the itty bitty titty committee, we're not prepared for that.
No,
No.
not at all.
Yeah, there's so many times I look at friends and strangers and I'm like, oh, I'll take my B cups all day long. All day. It just looks uncomfortable, and I already have back problems. Okay, so 40 years old, you started having some fatigue and breast swelling and tenderness and having to deal with that. And it's funny because we're not supposed to worry about menopause until we're like in our early to mid 50s. Didn't you think that was weird?
Totally. I didn't really understand how many of my symptoms were related to perimenopause until I really did a deep dive into it over the last couple of years. So I had a pretty major health crisis 2 years ago, and just a culmination of different things. And I think that's what led me into, putting those pieces all together. So I didn't realize what it was, and my doctors at the time didn't realize what it was. And I definitely felt dismissed by my primary care physician when I went to see him. I said, I have this like fatigue that's lasts for 3 months. I'm like, I know it's not depression. Like, I've had depression before. This is different. Like, this is what I'm doing. Can we do some full tests? And that's when they ran just like one test on my thyroid, just a TSH, and said everything was fine. And a lot of people like me have challenges with thyroid during the perimenopause years. They actually call it like thyropause. And so these symptoms kind of went together for me. So I've since gotten a hyperthyroid diagnosis. And so I kind of have that going on as well. It's hard for me to totally disentangle. Just like having perimenopause during 2020, it was like my first time having anxiety.
Yeah.
Wasn't
everyone having anxiety in 2020?
Yeah, a little bit with the shutdown. And I, of course, instead of like taking a break, I, launched 2 companies at once in 2020 and was working from home full time, trying to knock those out. So yeah, my anxiety was through the roof. And so that was something that I'd never experienced before. I was familiar with depression. I'd had depression, but hadn't had any anxiety. And so that was a new symptom for me that was pretty debilitating, and I had to learn a lot of skills to kind of manage that.
Yeah, and I feel, it's so consistent, right? That women who are in their 40s, even late 30s, go to their physicians and they're like, something just isn't right. I'm like, you get the, we'll just draw some blood and check all the boxes and tell you that you're fine and pat you on the head and they're there and just muscle through. When there's actually things that are wrong and that you can do something about. And I love that you're taking the road of what can you do for yourself on an everyday basis instead of like, what pills can you take? What injections can you take? Like, I feel like so much of that can go together. But I feel like people, make a decision one or the other. Like, I'm never going to take medications. I'm going to go au natural. But then they don't even know how to do it correctly with the pillars of what you're describing and prescribing. And so I just love these extra options for people. And honestly, just the awareness, you're in your 40s and having like, you're in women's health for fuck's sake. Like, you're a biology major, you're an athlete, all of these things and how your brain and your body are supposed to be acting. And you knew something was wrong and you got shuffled out the door without really any acknowledgement of, well, this could be perimenopause. And even sometimes just having a name to it makes you feel better. Like, I am not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. This is not depression. This is not solely anxiety. Like, I'm not all of a sudden having psychiatric disease that I've never had before. Like, my body and my brain are not getting what they need and they're not acting like they used to. And it's not okay to just shuffle that out the door. I'm so thankful for what you're doing. I love it.
Thank you.
And so, with those changes, what impact did that have on your personal life? I mean, your professional life, obviously, like you're launching new businesses and COVID and anxiety and not understanding what's going on with what's happening to your brain. But how did that affect your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, when things like really got bad was 2 years ago when we moved here to Colorado, and I actually had started taking medication for my since diagnosed hyperthyroidism, and so it was a thyroid suppressant, and it just completely shut down my body. I mean, I could not get out of bed for 6 weeks. My pulse was extremely low. I only had the energy. I could either take a shower or I could make a smoothie. That was like the energy for the entire day. So you can imagine, as an entrepreneur running a business, I mean, I couldn't work more than 4 hours a week. My brain fog was so thick. I was making, simple mistakes that I wouldn't have made before. I, lost, damaged long-standing client relationships. Like, it was devastating from, a business perspective. And as a high achieving woman, like, I've always identified with my brain. I've been able to rely on my mind to, keep track of things. And so my identity there, I think, kind of, crashed for sure. And then not having the strength to be able to take my dog out to walk around the block, never mind mountain bike or do anything that I love to do athletically, was also devastating. But, when it came to relationships, just being really shut down like that was so hard. I didn't have the capacity to like reach out to friends and connect. Right.
Right.
I just didn't have the energy to follow through. Like, I was afraid to make plans. Having moved to a new place, I wanted to meet new people, but I was afraid to make plans because I was like, well, am I not going to have the capacity to like leave the house that day?
Right.
Didn't want to be a flake. So it was, super challenging, right? I didn't have the energy to really support my husband with his new job, which is why we moved here, to like really listen and, help problem solve and things like that. So I think initially when the symptoms got so severe, it drastically impacted every aspect of my life and all my relationships.
Oh my goodness. And that sounds so isolating and lonely when you really needed to be connecting with new people, with old people, with your husband. I mean, the mental wellness part of that is so awful. Like, you're feeling like garbage and you can't even get out the door to go make yourself feel better by mountain biking, by skiing, by meeting with new friends, etc. Yeah, that's devastating. So how did you crawl out of that?
Slowly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my first pillars of my 6-month rebalance program is mindset. And a big piece of that, the research actually shows that like women's expectations of like how they feel like, menopause is going to be, actually is related to how severe their symptoms are. So if they think it's going to be, like really difficult, then they actually have more severe symptoms. So there's, quite a bit of mindset that's like how you talk to yourself. And I imagine there's a lot of other overachievers or former perfectionists out here who have a really sharp, inner critic, and that we talk to ourselves in ways that we wouldn't even talk to like our worst enemy, right?
No, that's not true. We're all so nice to ourselves in here and very complimentary, and we are our own best cheerleaders, Danielle.
Totally.
Never.
So, I mean, when I'm like lying in bed and like, okay, like, get up, like, come on, you lazy piece of crap, like get in the shower. Like, what's the big deal? Like, what's wrong with you? Like all of that talk is just, it's not helpful. And so I drew on my self-compassion practice. So I did a training with Kristen Neff, who's kind of the queen of self-compassion. And so really a big part of that, it's recognizing that, you're not the only person who's struggling with this right now. This is a natural, phase. Lots of people are struggling with chronic health issues, and providing some kindness to yourself. What do I need right now? I need rest. Okay. Like, what can I do to nurture myself right now? And so gratefully, I have a pretty solid meditation practice, a solid gratitude practice. I was trained a few years ago as an energy medicine practitioner and a Reiki master. And so I can provide all this self-healing for myself and to really calm my nervous system and to just kind of rewire some of that programming that I got at a young age that I had to achieve and work hard to stay safe, and to be like, okay, like I love myself just as I am. And like, a discovery of self-love and self-acceptance and surrender to what is not something that many of us maybe would ever choose to do, but sometimes it takes a health crisis to do that.
I feel like it's a very unnatural thing. It has to be learned and maybe even forced. Being able to be as kind and gentle and patient with ourselves as we are to our friends and the people around us, that's a tall order. I really love that for you. And now I'm like, I'm gonna have to work on some of that for myself. I'm just saying. So all of these changes that you had have led you to an interesting place. So tell us about your transition to what you're doing now as the perimenopause coach.
Yeah, so I started working as a leadership coach about 7 years ago. And my last business before I started my perimenopause coaching business was actually running an accelerator for underserved entrepreneurs. So working with women and people of color and members of the LGBTQ community and founders over 50 and people with disabilities and, a whole range of folks, essentially like people who don't fit that white tech bro model. So a lot of people starting businesses that are brick and mortar businesses and a variety of things. And what I was discovering, just given my longstanding background in health and wellness, is that, when you're working with an entrepreneur or a small business owner, they bring their whole self, to their work. And oftentimes they kind of ignore everything that keeps them healthy and happy. And so I was doing a lot of coaching around that. And so I found there was just a lot of overlap that was there. And I was working with a lot of women who happened to be in that menopause stage. And so, I guess I'm someone that when there's a problem, I kind of like to find a solution and then I want to share that solution with other people so they don't have to do it the hard way and figure it out on their own. So I ended up doing a health and wellness coaching program through Mind Body Green a year ago. I was just doing a ton of research on my own. There's a lot of new books and resources out there on menopause and perimenopause. Picked up an extra menopause coach certification and started to focus my new business on this.
I love that. It's not a surprise or a shock to me at all that there's been so little effort and research that's gone into figuring out what the heck is happening. The Women's Health Initiative was a mere 25 years ago. and has since essentially been skeletonized recently. And so, I mean, science takes so many decades to catch up with the research, especially if you're doing prospective studies, meaning like you're watching people throughout time as they go and testing them instead of doing everything through the retrospectoscope and Monday morning quarterbacking, which gives you information, but not the most accurate information. And so here we are, you know, the first quarter of this 21st century down the road, and we're still just barely scratching the surface of this. And it's so frustrating and disheartening, but there's something. Like, you're doing something, I'm doing something, people are doing things now. And I love that we're actually talking about it, because I just feel like the generation before us, like my mom and her sisters, I'm sure they never said a word. Not a word. My mom had a hysterectomy, oophorectomy, meaning they took her uterus and both of her ovaries and her tubes out at the age of 41. Like, she might not have even started perimenopause at that point.
Yeah.
She doesn't remember anything. But for her migraines, she got the whole shittery removed, and overnight she was in full-blown menopause. Bam, just like that. And you know what they did for her? Nothing. They didn't have a single conversation with her. They didn't say, hey, you're going to wake up from surgery and it's going to hurt in your, you know, nether regions, but everything else is going to go kablooey as well. And I mean, I have talked to her, this was 45 years ago, essentially. And I talked to her a little bit, and she's like, well, sometimes they'll put me on estrogen, but then they'll take me off because maybe I'm going to get breast cancer. And I was like, did you feel better when you were on estrogen? She's like, oh yeah, for sure. And it's like, what about the quality of your life? What about having a conversation with someone about, hey, here's the risks if you stay on this medication, that you already know what the benefits are, like, you know, cardiovascular health, bone density health, like keeping your mental health in order, of some kind of sanity. Not one single conversation about any of that. Nothing. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like, it's a good thing the woman lives in the gym and likes to play a lot of ball sports, because her bone density is actually good. But she could have been easily one of these frail little old women who tripped over an air molecule and fractured her hip, got pneumonia, and died. Like, that's how that progression works, right?
Yeah.
And all it took was some conversations, some insight, some science, and things could have been a lot different for a lot of people. And I still think, like, we're obviously way, way, way behind the ball anyways, like, because people still aren't talking about it nearly enough. We don't know all of the science behind how best to treat it, how to meld what you're doing on your end and Western medications, and probably different cultures all over the place probably treat this in so many different ways. But it's just this taboo thing that we're not supposed to talk about because it has something to do with our pelvis. What? Everyone has it. Like, let's go, people.
It's infuriating, and it's hard to imagine how many generations of women just suffered in silence, you know, and so the good news is that there are some providers out there who, you know, are trained. It's not enough, but there are providers like you who actually know what menopause and perimenopause is, and there's resources. There's great books and podcasts, and, you know, there's ways to get information, and women are starting to talk about it, because we're not willing to just accept that this is just the new normal, you know, and this is just part of aging. Yeah. It's not. And there are lots of options. And, you know, I just want to say I'm fully supportive of women doing menopause hormone therapy or HRT. You know, it's just, for me, after my experience with the thyroid suppressing medication, I was like, no, I'm not going to take more Western medication right now for this. This is not, you know, this is not working for me. And unfortunately, with a great endocrinologist and the best in the region that I went to, there was not a peep about any potential side effects. So for me to go, from like
Oh, wow.
functioning to being knocked down.
Yeah.
It was mind blowing. So, yeah.
Well, and I have friends who, because of underlying conditions, or the fact that they've just had such a horrible experience with oral contraception and other kind of hormone-based stuff when they were younger, they can't do menopausal hormone therapy. Like, one of them's like, I don't need to have another stroke. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's not do that again. And other people who are like, as soon as I take any kind of hormonal supplement, I start getting migraines again. And then, you've got that dysfunction to deal with. It knocks you on your ass for days at a time. And so having an option like what you offer, Danielle, is so massive, like they can take these courses and learn how to manage things in a more natural and balanced way than going to the pharmacy. Or they can go to the pharmacy and do what you're telling them to do and like figure out what works for them. But I feel like these have not been viable options for way, way, way too long. Like, can you imagine if dudes, like testosterone people, just all of a sudden, like, just planted like a tent stake at the age of like 42? Oh, I can't do anything anymore. Like, what would that look like? The whole fucking world would come to a standstill. So there would be research. There would be a ton of science on this. Like, they would be following every dude with testicles in the military through their entire career, and they would figure this out. But like, as vulva owners, we're just supposed to, deal with it. It's just aging. You're fine, honey. Pat, pat, pat. Like, no, there's options. There's things that we could be studying and figuring out and helping people to live a better life. And if everybody gets to feel a little bit better, doesn't everyone around them get to feel a little bit better? How many families and relationships and work relationships and everything else are just going the shitter because you aren't talking about perimenopause, because you're having hormonal changes and not dealing with it? I mean, I think it's kind of a catastrophe.
Well, it just reminds me of when I started the ski company. We were designing products for women by women, and we'd have all these, men say things like, well, for your niche. And we're like, women are 51% of the population. They're not a niche. It's like same thing with perimenopause. I mean, the fact is if you live long enough, you will go through perimenopause and menopause if you have a vulva. Like, that's just...
Yeah. You hope to get there. If you don't, something horrible and devastating happened. But yes, we are supposed to go through this. And this is my theory, actually, is that evolution has kind of screwed us over. So we're supposed to like have kids really early, 12, 13, when you very first start menstruating. You go ahead and have those kids. You have a bunch of kids because you're probably on a farm or a ranch or something like that. And then you basically stop having kids because you're breastfeeding all these kids and taking care of all these kids. And then your kids start having kids. So then you're the grandparent and you pass along all of the wisdom and information and story and culture and everything. And then you peace out at 45. Well, that's not what's happening anymore. Like that worked for when our lifespan was literally 2/3 of what it is now. But we've been living longer for a really long time, and yet no one has bothered to figure out how to make that experience better. Especially, in your 40s and 50s, like you're probably the best you've ever been at your career. You have a ton of wisdom. Like, your kids are getting older, but your parents are also super old. So you're in that horrible sandwich phase, and you're supposed to be doing fabulous with your work. And like at the same time, your entire system from hair to toenails is going to hell. Fix that. Fix that. You can't just take that. There's way too many expectations and desires and needs at this time of life to just be like, oh yeah, I can just stay in bed for 6 weeks while nobody does anything. That's fine. No, absolutely not. We just work that out.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously, if this was something that happened to men, there would be such an obscene amount of research money thrown at it. It'd be a whole different thing. Women have been being ignored, ever since Freud, called women hysterical and, all these
Yeah.
things, right? So, but I do want to offer a reframe on the perimenopause and the transition is that like what I was sharing from my experience where I was having all these, inner critic and negative things and like maybe even cruel things that my mom said to me when I was sick as a kid, and it was an opportunity for me to rewire those,
Yeah.
like a new mantra that I adopted is everything is always working out for me, which is the exact opposite of what I learned as a child, which was to be safe, I need to perfect and perform and people please. And I had to do everything right. And I had to achieve all these things to keep myself safe. And I always had to be on high alert, and that's a trauma response, right? And so there's this opportunity with this rewiring of our brain, this neurological rewiring that happens as we build a new brain during perimenopause, because that's what we're doing, that we can actually override these things that are no longer serving us. Like my body can't survive with me being on high threat, like I'm being chased by, a saber-toothed tiger all the time. Like I can't continue to function like that, And so learning how to find that safety and security from within is just a whole radically different way of being in the world than where I was before. So I think there's many things, that we can rewire and do.
That's beautiful. So what other fantastic things have come out from your struggle with this? Like, what are some of the other positives that have come out from you going through menopause?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about my business, I think about the startup hustle culture. And even when I worked in nonprofits, I mean, I was executive director for a nonprofit and actually ran a women's reproductive health clinic for years. And in those jobs, I was working 50 hours a week, like on email constantly, just being available, thinking about work when I was on a mountain bike ride, right? Like didn't have good practices to like unwind at the end of the night and drinking wine or beer before I went to bed to like turn off my brain, right? And for many of us, we get into these hormonal changes and alcohol hits us totally different. We can have like one glass of wine and our sleeping is fucked. Like,
oh my God.
I've got my aura, my heart rate, is like racing. And I'm like, it was one glass of wine. Like, come on, in my 20s, like it wasn't 2 bottles, right? It was a glass, right? So, so I've really had to like relearn how to work in a way that works for my system. So many of us have these dysregulated nervous systems. And so we're just like constantly going from task to task, we're under deadline all the time. And when we're working for ourselves, we're like so strict. I remember in my 40s with the ski company, like I wouldn't even get up to take a pee until I had finished whatever task I was working on, which might take a couple hours,
Yeah. Get back at it. Get back at it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like capitalism and it's, whatever we've been told to be these good little cogs in the wheel, and the reality is that we're not more efficient or more productive when we, work through lunch. So I've had to learn to actually not just get up from my computer and go downstairs and sit at the table, but to turn the damn phone off. Because
oh my God.
and emails right now, like with the chaos that's been happening in the world, like you are not stimulating your rest and digest. You know what I mean? Like you go into fight or flight as soon as you flip open, and look at the headlines. So, I've had to learn to like listen to music or to actually like be mindful while I'm eating and to actually, activate that rest and digest during lunch and to actually take those breaks. Like I would never take breaks before. And so, there's all these theories about, one is that you batch your time into 90-minute blocks and you take breaks, between. And then there's a whole nother one that's like you do 25 minutes of work with a 5-minute break or 50 minutes with a 10-minute break, and I've had to like come up with other things because I think when we're programmed and we're hardwired to like get shit done, then like for me, I'm like, well, I'm taking a break, but I have to like be doing something, right? Like, so if I have the energy, so now I have like a list of things, it's like, okay, like I can get up and go do the dishes, and, I can get up, and it's like relaxing for my brain because I'm not doing the intense focus work that I'm doing when I create content or when I'm focused one-on-one with a coaching client,
Absolutely.
Like rituals in between clients before I get on a call, after a call, where I get grounded and centered, and so I pop in that mindfulness that I do for 5 minutes, before the calls. Like, it's so important to have the brain take a break, and so many women ask me about this brain focus part, and they're like, well, how, like, how do you do that? And a big thing is we're constantly consuming information. Like, I realized that when I'm in the car, I'm listening to podcasts 24/7, the whole time I'm in the car. And so I've had to tell myself, okay, we're going to take a break and just drive for 15 minutes of silence. And just let your mind
learn and be productive and make sure that you're, getting all the information and all of that. Like, it's just go, 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 go. The constant flog. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how many times. There was a specific moment, I remember exactly where I was walking in the emergency department. And I was so proud of myself, like consciously proud of myself, that I was eating a thing of yogurt while I walked. Because I was eating a thing of yogurt. I was like, I'm actually eating on shift. And I'm being healthy because it's yogurt and not like a bag of chips or something like that. And I was walking while I was doing that. And I was like, no, I think I was like 15% of the way there. Like, yes, I was eating, and I was eating something kind of healthy for me. But I didn't sit down. I didn't drink any water. I didn't pee. I didn't like turn off my brain. I was literally just going between patients' rooms, shoveling food in my face. And it was a few days later, I was again like, I am here again with my yogurt and my spoon. And I went by, and like one of the nurses asked me something, and I just was like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, everybody should take a break. Everybody should get a break. What am I doing? And I'm my own boss. And I'm not giving myself a break because I'm like, come on. And then this patient, and then this paperwork, and then these dictations, and then all this stuff. And I'm going to give myself an internal trophy for 4 ounces of freaking yogurt while I am power walking down the hallway. That seems like something that needs to change. And I mean, it made a little dent, but it wasn't until the last couple of years in the emergency department that I would actually allow myself to go in and sit down for like 9 minutes and eat. And so many of my meals were completely ruined because I would end up microwaving them 3 or 4 times. Because I'd be like, okay, this is it. I'm going to take a break and shove it in the microwave, and then the phone would go off. Okay, so like 28 minutes later, go back in, put it in the microwave, and I would do that for like an hour and a half. And it was so sad because I could see like other people's meals mid-microwave as well. Like, nobody was actually eating, but we were microwaving stuff. And I'm like, this is healthy. This is good quality of life right here. Like, you can't take 2 minutes to microwave and 3 minutes to shove it in your face without getting interrupted. That fight or flight, I mean, that saber-toothed tiger was like here all the time. And I can't say that in the 2 years that I've left the emergency department that the cat is gone. I can't say that, but it's better. Like, I actually feel anxiety for the first time in 35 years. If you don't feel anxious being an emergency physician, that says something about your nervous system, that you are not connected in that way. There's something wrong with you. We are doing things that are incredibly anxiety producing, and yet nothing. I still remember the first time I felt it. And I was like, oh, what is that? Oh, I'm a little nauseous. Oh God. Like, I'm a little fluttery. I'm a little nauseated. My body doesn't feel right. What is that? And it was probably 5 or 6 times after that. I was like, I'm nervous. I'm anxious. Oh my God, that's so weird. But I think just being at a 10 out of 10 for 26 years, right? Just pounding, that same perfectionistic attitude, must do, must perform, must, like, for all of the safety in the world that you mentioned, I think I took that to the nth degree, and it took me years to even like dial it down to an 8 out of 10 so that I could feel the little bumps that would come up. I'm like, oh, do I need to do something about that? My therapist was like, no, just feel it, fool. Like, like, just feel it. Be grateful that you've figured out how to not operate at a 10 out of 10 24/7, and feel that and just be okay with it. Oh my goodness, the damage that we've done. But I love that, like, you've turned this into a more beautiful and serene and graceful way of moving through life, and an improved quality of life. Like, that's gorgeous when, most people, the whole house of cards is burning down right now. How's your relationship with your husband now that, like, you've moved, you've gotten the thyroid thing sorted out, and now you have a new business about more being present and dealing with all the neuronal nuances that are happening in your body? How's it going with your husband?
I mean, I didn't mention one of my symptoms before that was pretty clear, was the hormonal rage that I was feeling that I hadn't felt since I was 15. And I was so grateful my husband was working shift work and was not home, because I just needed to like fucking yell and like just, I mean, it was just like, it was about like, just the house was full of, and like, so yeah, I'm glad that I got that under control, because that was a surprise. I didn't know that was happening. I mean, like most couples, we've been together for over 20 years. And so we've had ups and downs and, conflicts and everything. I would say the last 2 years since we moved here and kind of gone through the thick of things with my hormonal changes, I would say that we are just so much closer than we've been. It's just, I mean, there's just a deeper level of intimacy and connection. I mean, we've had some difficult conversations over the last few years and are really on the same page about like where we see our future, and like supporting each other in our careers and supporting each other with, navigating family dynamics and forming new friendships, and really allowing ourselves to like grow and change. Because I think that's a pretty tough thing, to navigate. I mean, there's so much change that happens. I think during this time can be a real time of transformation. And so to be able to meet each other where you are and actually see each other, it's been really powerful.
Wow. The upside of menopause. I love that. Because it shouldn't all be pessimistic, right? Like, I'm enjoying the heck out of like reprioritizing and figuring out, it's almost like a mortality thing. Like, well, we're past middle age, and so joy and pleasure and fun is really creeping up the list of things that must be done. And I think that perfectionistic part and having some grace and patience with myself comes out of the fact that I realize that time is limited. My kid just graduated from high school and he's going to be off to college soon. And I think that really influenced my decision to leave the emergency department, because I realized I was missing out on so many things. I was missing out on a lot of his activities and being home with him, or at least being available when he decided he wanted to spill the tea and talk to me. Sure. We've had so many conversations in my office when he cruises in, and I've just been like, pause. What's going on, kid? And I can't do that from the emergency department. And honestly, I couldn't do that with the priorities that I had of like just pounding and grinding and just keeping it going and that really toxic rat race thing.
Yeah.
And it's brought me so much closer to him and really enhanced my friendships, my relationships, whether they be romantic or with family or friends. All of that is so much more important and critical. That social time that means so much more and like just enriches your life and improves the quality of life. Like you were saying, like it sounds like the communication with your husband is so much better because you've had to talk about some really difficult, nasty, icky, uncomfortable and scary things. And then on the other side of it is this new bond and this new connection and new understanding of who both of you have become individually and then together as well. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Danielle, I am so thrilled to reconnect with you, even though you're not in Reno anymore. But yeah, let's keep talking about this stuff. I feel that there's tons of information. I learned a bunch from you today, and I'm sure that listeners are going to want to hear a lot more about your experience and your history. Water polo, amazing. So yeah, let's have you back soon.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed today. Thanks, Cari.
Right on. Okay, let's do it. I'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks for fuck's sake. We'll be back at you soon.